Hello and welcome to Legal Perspectives. My name is Jim Harpring, your host. This program is sponsored by the Indian River County Bar Association in conjunction with the School Board of Indian River County as a public service to the citizens of our community. I'm very pleased to be joined today with our first guest, John Moore. John is a local attorney in town. He's also a certified public accountant. He's currently the managing partner of Rossway, Moore & Taylor, which is a law firm here in Vero Beach. In his area of practice, he concentrates in the area of estate planning and real estate law. John's a Domer, and by that I mean he is a graduate of Notre Dame, also went to Virginia Law School prior to returning to Vero. Your host, Jim Harpring, please stay with us, and we'll be right back.
As a member of our community who is concerned with family values and children making ethical choices, we are proud to sponsor the 2004 School Night for Scouting. All boys in the 1st through 5th grades who join the Cub Scouts that evening will receive the Schumacher Pinewood Derby kit. Boy Scouts was an important part of my life, and I strongly encourage you to make a difference in a boy's life.
Join the Boy Scouts Thursday, August 26th at 7 p.m. at an elementary school near you.
Okay, good job. Good job, boys.
Hello and welcome back to Legal Perspectives. I'm Jim Harpring, your host. The Legal Perspectives is a program that's sponsored by the Indian River County Bar Association and the Indian River County School Board as a public service to the citizens of our community. If you'd like some more information on the Indian River County Bar Association, please go to www.irclaw.org. That's www.irclaw.org. It's got a listing of all the member attorneys and their practice areas, as well as a lot of other important government and community information. If you just joined us, we were speaking with John Moore, an attorney at Rossway, Moore & Taylor, and now I'm very glad to be joined by a colleague and old friend, Bobby Guttridge. Bobby, thanks for joining us on the program. How are you today?
I'm doing well, Jim. Thanks for having me.
Oh, no, it's my pleasure. Bobby, you're a graduate of University of Florida. Go Gators. And this involuntarily comes out. You can't help it. You also graduated from law school, California Western Law School.
Mm-hmm.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and your practice background?
Well, I went to undergrad at University of Florida. Met my wife while I was there. Took some time off and actually worked as a financial consultant for American Express for a few years. And decided I wanted to be a lawyer. I'd always wanted to be a lawyer, but you know, there's these funding issues. You have to actually pay for it.
They want tuition.
I know, it's crazy. Now they want tons of tuition. It's gone up triple-fold since I went. But that was 10 years ago when I was in law school. We went to California and went to law school in San Diego, beautiful town.
Absolutely, absolutely. How did you find the transition from first, getting out of college and then, actually working as opposed to going right to graduate school, getting your law degree? How did you find the transition first, from sort of working day to day to going back to school and then getting out of school and working as an attorney?
Well, I was ready to go back to school. Working is work. I mean, it's school is school no matter how hard it is. Even law school, even when all through law school, I found that I enjoyed that a great deal. And although I enjoy practicing law a great deal, that can be a grind sometimes. It is work. You got to work late hours, and you don't have that camaraderie there every day, because in law school you have people there who are all in the same situation. They're all really don't know what's going on. So you've got a real tight-knit kind of family that you're going through the whole thing with.
Suffering through the same thing.
So it's enjoyable. I enjoyed law school a great deal, and San Diego was beautiful. Mm-hmm. While I was out there, I worked for a Judge Cynthia Gamer, who was what would be tantamount to our circuit court judges here, and learned a tremendous amount while working for her.
Now, having gone to California Law School, and I myself also went to an out-of-state law school, New England School of Law, how did you find the transition coming here, taking the bar and getting familiarized with Florida law? I know it's something that a lot of people have to do. How did you find that?
Well, first of all, I grew up in Florida. I grew up in Ocala, Florida, and I went to undergrad at the University of Florida, so I was real familiar with Florida. So with regards to that, and I had worked. I was, a business person here, and so I had some, kind of understanding of how things worked in Florida and just sort of the underlying culture of the area. But everybody gets sort of this nervousness about transferring from one out-of-state school to the place you're going to practice or take the bar. I think that's probably. I don't really think that that's an important thing, because you don't really learn that much about the real world of practicing law, first of all, in law school. I mean, they're very
Sure.
different, the practical aspects of everyday law and what you learn in law school. As John Moore was saying earlier, I think when I was watching, he was talking about that, and that is certainly true. As far as the testing, I took the California bar. After I took the Florida bar, I'd actually taken the Florida bar. And
You didn't enjoy the Florida bar enough, huh? You had to take another one.
Well, I don't know why I did that. I figured I'd better do it while it was still fresh. I was
Sure.
at the public defender's office, and I decided I'd go ahead and take it. I took 3 days out there and went and took the bar.
And to clarify just a little bit for people who don't realize, the bar essentially is broken up by and large into two parts. Aside from the ethics examination, we have the multi-state portion, which is uniform across the state. No matter what state you take the bar examination in, the test is going to be the same, the questions are going to be the same, but each individual state has its state portion of the bar exam, which is unique to that state's law. But you would certainly hope that someone that was able to, graduate from law school would be able to at least, study up, take the review courses, get the material, and, and do that. Do you think the bars a lot of time is a way, at least in terms of the application of the bar, to maybe limit the number of professionals in a particular state as far as having a rigorous bar exam, not having reciprocity, which is if you're a member of the bar of one state, you can practice in another state. What do you think about that, Bobby?
Well, I mean, I think it is meant to limit people just crossing over state lines, getting a bar, passing the bar in one state, and then just going kind of freelancing into other states. There is a forum to do that if you want to do a couple cases in other states, but I don't really think it limits too much the lawyers.
We got plenty, don't we?
Well, most of the lawyers I know, if they don't pass it the first time, which is not that uncommon, they take it again and again and again until they take it. And I was talking to a young lawyer the other day who was just about to take the bar exam. And I told him, I was very fortunate. The first time I took both of the bar exams, they asked me all the questions I knew. They can make those tests so hard, or they could ask you stuff that is just so far out of what you studied that you can't pass it. Some of it is just kind of getting fortunate in having them ask you the right questions.
Sometimes the luck of the draw. And I know that the Florida portion has an essay examination, and certainly we're talking about issues of subjectivity, and that can be difficult. Now, how about the transition from law school, where they do have some clinical programs, usually in the area of prosecution or defense on the criminal side, to the actual day-to-day practice of law? Now, I know you worked as an assistant public defender for a while, but you were also in business. So when you went out in private practice, you probably had maybe a little keener idea of the nuts and bolts of actually running a business and, payroll and taxes and things like that than probably a lot of other, people that maybe come fresh out of law school and just hang out their shingle.
Oh yeah, I think that's real difficult for people coming out. The people I talk that come out from a government job or who've never worked in any kind of a business setting before in their lives can have a real difficult time just with the business aspects. Forget about the legal aspects. You can be the greatest lawyer in the world, know everything about the law, make great arguments in court if that's what you're doing, be an excellent researcher, but still struggle in this idea of running a business. And it is a business. I mean, but having said that, what I have found with almost every lawyer I know that's been successful, if you're a good lawyer and you really care about doing a good job as a lawyer, you will be successful in the business stuff. You'll get it. Most of the people are very smart if you're a very good lawyer, you're probably a pretty smart person to begin with. Certainly you have some degree of common sense, and you can get all the business stuff. And there's a lot of people around that can help you.
I'm sure when you were sitting in our lovely green room watching John and I speak, I talked a little bit about the idea that attorneys, while we see a lot of specialization, even though you might specialize in one particular area, the amount of knowledge that you might have to have, whether it be practical, academic, or just general knowledge about a lot of other areas, is very, very important. Take for your practice area that you practice in a lot, criminal defense. Not only do you have to know what's on the statute, but you have to know things that may not necessarily be familiar to you from law school that you need to learn, such as forensic evidence techniques, new advancements in scientific technology and different things like that. How did you find the difference between just what you got in criminal law 1 and 2 in law school and what you learn when you actually start cross-examining a real witness in court and start to take depositions and do it for real?
Oh, there's no comparison. You really don't get a lot of of real nuts and bolts when you're in law school. It's very, very difficult to apply that. You have trial classes, and they'll give you some trial experience, but it's in a very a static sort of situation where you just have basically students judging you, and the judges who are professors aren't quite as hard. You know, as you well know in the criminal defense world, the judges, especially for the defense lawyers, can you know, sometimes make rulings that you don't agree with. You kind of scratch your head. And I'm sure the other side thinks the exact same thing, obviously.
Sure. But there's a different tenor, because if you're in a moot court situation like that at school and you're acting as the prosecution and you lose, you don't have to worry about the fact that you know, a dangerous criminal went free. Or if you're on the defense, you don't have to worry about the fact that perhaps an innocent person was improperly convicted. It just doesn't feel and taste the same when you're sitting there with someone next to you, does it? Oh,
no question about it. You know, and that's one thing I think a lot of people don't realize, especially from my perspective, from a criminal defense perspective. You know, you hear this this age-old term, how can you defend that person, or how can you do that?
And that's a good question. How do you address that?
Well, you're not defending that person that they see who committed this sort of heinous crime, and sometimes not so heinous crimes. Some of the crimes are really not, you wouldn't think of as being a particularly big deal, but you get to know this person. And people come into your office, they're very scared, they're on very, I guess, good behavior. You get to know them, you get to know their families, you get to know what their jobs are, their bosses call you, and it becomes very personal to you. And so what you see, and what I see when I'm representing someone, is I see this person who is very scared and who's looking to me for help, and you know, really, and probably the most important thing they've ever done in their life, something that's going to be potentially life-changing for them. And so the pressure to perform for them, the stress to help them out is tremendous. There's hardly a night anymore that I don't stay awake and toss and turn. And my wife, you know, I'm up and down all night long. I get back from the couch and back in. She's like, sleep, Bobby.
Well, yeah, it certainly many different types of cases can weigh on you. For those of you that might have just joined us, we're here speaking with, as described by John Moore, the Bobby Guttridge is in the sexy practice of law, and quoting John Moore on that, by the way. And this is Legal Perspectives. This program is sponsored by the Indian River County Bar Association and the Indian River County School Board as a service to the citizens of our community. I'd like to again mention that the Bar Association does have a website. That's www.irclaw.org. It's very informative, got a lot of great information, and I think everyone would probably be pretty well served by taking a look at it. Again, I'm Jim Harpring, your host, and we're going to continue our conversation with Bobby Guttridge. Bobby practices primarily in the area of criminal defense, and you've done a lot of trial work. Let me ask you this. We've gone from a different manner of getting potential jurors into the courtroom. We have essentially motor voter now, where we have at least what some would argue is a broader spectrum, or a more diverse spectrum of potential jurors coming into the courtroom. And you were practicing before that was the case. Have you seen any noticeable difference in the composition of jurors? And then secondly, I'd like to just ask sort of your opinion about what you think about the quality of jurors and the ability of jurors to come in and sort of, as it were, see through all the stuff that the lawyers are throwing around.
Sure. Well, there is a difference, obviously. They were using, I guess, registered voters, obviously, yes, before, and now they're using the driver's license. And you see a much more diverse group coming in to be jurors. I think that's probably a good thing. You know, this is a jury of your peers. It's one of the only things that we can do as citizens, not lawyers, to come into the courtroom and make decisions on normal, everyday people's lives. And I think it's important that you have a real diverse crowd. You're not just getting a certain group of people. Now, I think everybody should register to vote, and, and I would encourage them all to do that, but that's not always the case. And I think that society in general is served when you have a more diverse group and when everybody can. I would like to see it where there was some other way to actually spread it out even more. I think that we should really have a broader jury pool so that everybody, every citizen in this country has the right to come into court and hear these real problems of real people and make decisions.
You know, and we know a lot of times we'll be sitting in pretty serious cases, and you look around the courtroom, and the courtroom itself is completely empty. Yet, you know, the citizens of our community can come down to the courthouse, and whether it's a civil trial or a criminal trial, you know, absent some particular statutory reason for the courtroom to be closed, such as a juvenile victim or something like that, you can go down there and see what's happening and see the attorneys. Let me play devil's advocate for a little bit in the context of the jury system. Is there not an argument to be made that those that register to vote are more interested in the system, and therefore they would make better jurors because of the fact that they registered to vote is proof in and of itself that they're more interested in the system and the community, whereas, you know, converse to that, we almost all need to have a driver's license, especially in the Treasure Coast and South Florida because of the nature of public transportation. Is there any merit to that argument?
Well, I mean,
don't shoot me down too bad.
No, I'm not. I mean, on one hand, certainly those people are going to be more interested politically, what's going on in the world, just more interested in general about these sorts of issues, legal issues and whatnot. But, you know, I don't really, if we were going to do that, you know, we could just put on the jury sheet, do you want to serve? And we wouldn't have too many people. And frankly, if you got only a jury of people who said, I want to serve, you probably wouldn't want many of those jurors. Now, some of them, you get people in who always say, yeah, I always wanted to serve, and they're good jurors. But people have a lot of things going on in their lives. You know, they have work, they have kids, they have financial pressures, and you're not going to get, it's not going to be a fair system where you can't possibly get a jury of your peers. And we live in an area that's largely retired. There's a lot of retired people, and you get a lot of retired people sitting on these juries. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. Certainly, those folks make fine jurors, but I don't think that that's what you want. And in a system, sometimes you'll get, you know, a young black man charged with selling drugs out in the, you know, Gifford in our community. I think for him, he wants a jury of his peers isn't a bunch of people who really don't understand his situation. I don't think that should disqualify them though by any means. But I think that the more diverse you get, the better decisions you're going to have, and the more those decisions are going to reflect society in our small community.
How about the responsibility to serve? Is there anything to be said for that? Because we know that in many cases, in fact, I was involved in a jury trial last year, and we needed a very large number of jurors. It was the summertime. It was in Okeechobee County, and literally the number of people that showed up for that day of jury selection, we knew simply was not enough to select a jury because of the nature and the complexity of the case and the nature of the community that we were in. We just knew that we needed X number of people, and they just weren't there, and unfortunately the judge can't dispatch the entire sheriff's department out to pick everybody up that's supposed to be there. So I think there are a lot of difficult issues. Let me ask you about this. There's been a lot of talk recently and discussion about whether or not jurors should be allowed to ask questions. Now, maybe for some attorney, maybe that strikes fear into your heart because, as you know, I'm a trial attorney, and I've spoken with many jurors after many trials I've had, and it's always phenomenally enlightening to see what the jurors individually, even though they're all separate, what they might collectively have thought was important, either was or was not stressed during the trial by one side or the other, and it's something that a lot of jurors have wanted to do. What do you think about juries asking questions? Well,
that's an interesting question. Let me first address the issue about what juries, how they decide cases. It's funny, every time I talk to a jury, even if I sit in and watch a case, if it's my case and I talk to the jury later on about what they thought, what was important to them, I'm always struck as to the fact that it's never what I thought it was. It is always something else.
That's kind of a truism with trial attorneys, isn't it?
It seems like it. And I don't know if you really get accurate answers in those when you're doing that, or how they really make those decisions. I'd love to be on a jury myself and go back there. Every time I get called, the 2 times, you sort of get the mandatory, it seems, lawyer strike against you.
I've got a summons for September. I hope I get selected to a jury.
I'll have to mark that on my calendar, Jim.
Not with this face. Anyways, what about what about the idea of even if we get more diversity, the jurors, the fact that they do perhaps pick out different things that were not important necessarily in our arguments. Do you think their ability to ask questions about those things would help or hinder the process generally? And I don't just mean the case that we as the prosecution or the defense or the plaintiff or the defense might be putting forward.
Gosh, I don't know. You're right. That does strike fear in you, though. I mean, you have your hands full with, the judge's ruling and the prosecutor objecting and the other side, whoever they are, the defense objecting. You got your hands full with that. And I don't know. In one sense, I think in the civil cases, it seems to work a little bit better. I think the problem in criminal cases is you run a little. You're always afraid you're going to run afield of somebody's constitutional rights. Mm-hmm. That there's evidence that can't come in, that can't really be commented on. Mm-hmm. The defendant's right to remain silent comes to mind as first and foremost. And so I think that's kind of problematic in those cases, in criminal cases, and my vote is that we don't do it. But in civil cases, I've talked to some lawyers, and none of them seem to really like it, but I'm not sure that it hinders the fact-finding purpose of the jury. In fact, I think sometimes it helps them. Mm-hmm.
Has, depending on what area you practice in, the economy can or cannot have an effect. In your particular area, do you think economic swings, good or bad, have an effect on the business of your law practice?
Oh gosh, certainly it does. I don't know. I tend to operate sort of at a steady capacity at all times, but I think it does, especially with things like, DUIs come to mind in general. People are a little more inclined to fight those when times are better for them. And you're starting to see more middle class come into this area. When I first came here 9 years ago now, there was really there wasn't a lot of young people, and young, I mean my age and your age.
Mm-hmm. Thanks for lumping me in there. I appreciate it.
Well, the grace threw me a little bit, but there's getting to be more people that are sort of middle class people, and certainly in the business of practicing law, in criminal business, I think in any business, that probably will help you.
And I know the Florida Bar has a lot of programs for young attorneys, the practicing with professionalism seminars, the law office management seminars and things like that. And you can do a lot sort of after the facts once you started your practice. But what's your opinion about maybe the Bar Association, either the ABA or the individual state bars, pushing for some mandatory curriculum in terms of law office management, especially in light of the fact that for many young attorneys in their own practices, it'll be the first time that they've ever had to perhaps handle large amounts of money in a trust account, which attorneys have, where we take oftentimes exorbitant, phenomenal amounts of money and put them in our trust account and keep them safe. And I think a lot of the disciplinary actions that you see, if you just read the bar news, that the bar is very concerned about are violations of trust account and money. Do you think that there's enough education in that regard?
Oh, I'm sure that there's not. Those are the things that we look at in my practice. I mean, and just had a discussion today with my secretary about, and we do it, but let's make sure that these trust account books are always perfect. There can't be any little glitch. If we get money in, it's got to go in immediately. If you have to stay in late and go make the deposit, you got to be very careful with those kinds of things because you're handling people's money that's not yours.
Say situations where you might get in a civil case, you might get a settlement check from an insurance company, and you might be obligated to actually, from that amount of money that you get, pay other people, perhaps other than your client, like medical providers, sure. Insureds, things like that. And that's a pretty big responsibility, don't you think?
Sure, and the bar takes it very, very seriously. And I'm sure, I think that there's a lot of CLEs, and we're continuing legal education requirements, and we're all required to take those. But I think for young lawyers, you should take more. When I first started practicing law, I got every, and I had a business background, but I got every bit of videotaped legal education with regards to business that I could find so that I would be better able to run my business, and it's still a trial and error.
Well, it's kind of a unique business, though, isn't it? I mean, you're practicing law, but
Yes.
there's also a business aspect to it that's not retail per se, because you're not there with your cash register and they take their item and go. You might have to consider payment plans and circumstances, or, you know, people's just personal assurances.
Yeah, and I hate thinking about those kinds of issues with my clients, quite honestly. Once I'm in the case, you know, I don't want to think about those sorts of issues. I want to represent my client, and that's really what I do. And I've kind of delegated that to other people with regards to the financial aspects, because I don't want to get that kind of thing muddled in there. And it's really not my personality. And I think most really good lawyers that I know, they get in a case, they don't want to withdraw no matter what. They want to stick it out with their client. They forget about those sorts of fees. And so you need to have people around you that can, you know, sometimes guide you with regards to the business aspects, can say, hey, look, you know, there's some financial obligations that need to be met here.
There's been a lot of talk lately about the revisions to the funding of the state court system. As many of our viewers probably know, Revision 7 to Article 5 of the Constitution basically shifted funding from the localities, from the counties to the state for certain essential court functions. And there was certainly a lot of talk about alternative dispute resolution case management techniques like drug court and teen court being abolished. Do you think that alternative dispute resolution methods, in the criminal side at least, in terms of drug court and teen court, work in regards to recidivism, people getting back into the system, in other words, that type of thing?
Well, yes. I mean, the basic answer is I do think generally yes. Those kinds of programs deal with people who are not repeat offenders. And although in the drug sense, I think that maybe they should deal with some repeat offenders, because I think people who are addicted to drugs that qualify for the programs and who benefit the most by them, sometimes they don't get it on the first time. It can be something that's very difficult to shake. And they do work. You know, there was a study several years ago by the Rand Corporation that clearly laid out the differences to the economic impact with rehabilitation versus punishment, and the rehabilitation was far better for society as a whole. And I think that's true. You help people get on their feet, get a job, and it's better for them and for society. And it's a real shame if those programs are cut and we just start saying, look, we're just going to, you know, you're a first-time drug user, and we're just going to either place you on probation and make you have a record, or we're going to put you in jail. It's a shame, and I don't think it does anybody any good, really. It certainly doesn't serve society's purposes.
Let me ask you briefly, we just have a couple of minutes left. You see a lot of young attorneys around town in the practice, both, you know, government attorneys and otherwise. How's the quality of the attorneys coming out now? Certainly it was great when we were coming out of law school, just outstanding. But what do you think about the quality of the younger attorneys coming out of law school at this point in time? Do you think they're a little more computer savvy? I know when we got out, it wasn't. I mean, we were breaching the computers are everything. You know, but now I think the idea of, you know, the computer research is probably a lot more prevalent in law school itself than it was. I went to law school in the '80s. Sorry to age myself here, but what do you think about that?
Well, I think the attorneys coming out, they seem to be very well trained. All the ones that I run into are competent and are articulate, and sometimes a little inexperienced, and not in law and in life a little bit. And I think that's probably one of the things that makes a better attorney. You got to get just time underneath you, but they certainly seem to know what's going on. They have some basic skills, the lawyers I see, that you know are frankly sometimes impressive.
Well, that's good to hear. I think the community can be satisfied that you know, here in our locality in Indian River County, I think we have a phenomenal quality of attorneys. You know, by and large, everybody is phenomenally professional and collegial. What do you think about that?
I think that for some reason this area seems to draw good lawyers. I mean, the people who come here and want to live here, this is a family-oriented community, and the people who come here and live here are typically very solid people, solid citizens. They want to make a career in the practice of law if they're in the practice of law, and I think that draws really better lawyers than you might get in a larger city that just is going to kind of have the mix of any old lawyer that got out of law school and, you know, barely schmucked their way through and is now going to try and, to use the same term, schmuck their way through a law practice.
That's a technical legal term, ladies and gentlemen. We'll have to look that up in Black's Law Dictionary. Well, we just about run out of time. I hope everyone has enjoyed the program today. Earlier we were speaking with John Moore of Rossway, Moore & Taylor, and had the pleasure of speaking here with Bobby Guttridge. And I want to thank everyone for joining us. This has been Legal Perspectives, a public service program produced by Indian River County Bar Association and the school board. My name is Jim Harping, your host. I certainly look forward to seeing you again. Thank you for joining us.